Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a few companies that I can talk about. One is a solar installation company. What we tried to do was build out a better internal infrastructure that would lend itself to a more sustainable kind of operation and growth going forward. So what do I mean by that? One of the things they were doing was they were selling solar panels, doing the installation, and then never touching that customer again after that. And so putting in place a follow-up process, aftermarket sales, what additional things can we sell them? That kind of started the journey of how we wanted to fix that company. As we started going down that road, we realized that there were some other services that we could sort of fold in to their existing offering. So HVAC, roofing, windows, whole home battery, EV charging station in the garage. There were all these sorts of add-on things that wouldn't really take a whole lot more education for their installation team to learn how to do, but it would completely shift their marketing persona, their identity, from being a solar company to being a whole home energy efficiency company. I mean, you can imagine if your average ticket size was 15 grand and then all of a sudden it was 70 grand and you got 3 different products lumped together, that's a 4x of your company.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicco Leone. Tonight we have a special guest, Nicco Leone, who is the founder of Nemean Pride, a dynamic consulting company that specializes in finance, operations, and HR consulting. Nicco's journey is all about balancing professional success with personal freedom, and he's currently writing a book on how you don't have to wait until retirement to start living your ideal life. So he's going to be talking to us about a couple of things tonight: his business, his book that's on the way, and about being a digital nomad. So Nicco, welcome.
Thank you very much. Do you ever go by Nicco? Sometimes Nicholas, they'll go by
Sometimes
Nicco.
I'm called Nicco by a couple of folks, but it's normally Nicholas, Nick, and my grandmother and my mother call me Nicky, and my sister. But I don't tell anyone that.
I mean, I think the word nickname came from people named Nicholas. It's like, what should we call this guy? Let's give him a nickname.
Exactly.
I just made that up.
So you are a digital nomad. So where in the world are you now?
So right now I am in Antigua in the Caribbean. And we've been here for so far the entire year of 2024. Last year we were all over Europe. Maybe I was in your neck of the woods for a little bit. And then in the year before that, we spent the whole year in Hawaii. So we like islands. We like warm weather because then you don't have to pack a lot in your suitcases.
And mosquitoes, obviously.
Right. Yeah, we love mosquitoes.
So Antigua, that's fantastic. I've never been that side of the world. So I'm based in Oslo, as you know, and we're slowly getting into winter. So a lot of folks are probably jealous of the nice weather that you've got. So let's talk about it. One of the aspects that I found fascinating about your work is that it's all about community and building communities and being part of a community. And one of the things founders, startups, and entrepreneurs struggle with sometimes is building their own community, getting involved in a community, and making time for networking and mentorship, etc. Talk to me about the type of community building that you've been involved with, and perhaps how that ties into Nemean Pride.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you are a digital nomad, when you're traveling around, it is difficult sometimes to have a community. Also, I would pair that with just running your business, trying to grow your business. It is difficult to find new clients. So those two things together sort of spawned the idea for us to get a little bit more involved in entrepreneurial communities. I know you talk about different sorts of marketing tactics on the show. It's basically network marketing or community marketing. It's like, how do I get my business in front of more and more like-minded people who may want to work with me as a partner, they may want to be a client, or they may want to refer somebody to me, and vice versa. So that's why we started going down the road. And we originally joined, so I've got a few people on my team, we joined different communities that existed. These are mostly remote communities. And then usually they will do some sorts of events once a quarter or once a year, something like that, where you actually get in person. And we liked it so much that we started our own community.
Awesome. So I've worked with a community, it's not a digital one, but called the Young Presidents Organization. And I've seen the value in working with that type of organization. What kind of level or what kind of folks would get the best value out of what you do? So maybe for those who don't know about Nicco and your background, start with your background and then let's talk about Nemean Pride and what it actually does.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I started my career at a big consulting firm, basically consulted for billion-dollar companies in New York City. From there, I totally shifted and went the startup route, ran my own startup within like a VC fund incubator. And then I started to actually just consult for other startups within that incubator. So I kind of had the macro business and then the micro business. Neither of them were my favorite. And so I ended up joining as an executive at like an IT infrastructure company. And that company was about 3 million in revenue. And that was sort of when I learned, okay, this is kind of my sweet spot where there's product market fit. They have sales. It's not like a startup where they're just burning cash, raising money all the time. But there's also no red tape and bureaucracy yet. So there's a lot of change that you can make. So we ended up raising private equity funds, millions of grant dollars for that company, scaled it, sold it. And then I started my consulting firm and we focus in on that size business. So we say, 2 to 15 million in revenue, but you really want to professionalize and you want to take some of the lessons of those big billion-dollar companies and bring them to your company to help you kind of get to the next level. That's our sweet spot. And, we do that we have finance consultants on our team, HR consultants, operations consultants, and we sort of put together whatever the right team is for your business based on what are the weaknesses that you have holding you back from scaling. And we just kind of bolt that team onto your business. So it works really well. That is not exactly what my community does, though. My community is a little bit different. So this community that we started, it was interesting. When we were joining all these other communities that already existed, there's so many of them nowadays, honestly. Like you can easily go find one. But what we thought was kind of missing was there wasn't always a ton of like knowledge and consulting being like brought to the community. It was sort of more around the realm of just marketing and trying to get leads. And so the community that we founded, we set it up with 2 partners who each have their own consulting firms. And the 3 of us, we call this community the boardroom. And so the 3 of us serve as your board of directors, basically. That's what we're doing in the community. And so there's small groups. It's not like a 20-person virtual community. It's like a 4-person virtual community, 4 different business owners. And then me and my 2 partners, we are serving as your board of directors. So, we meet twice a month. Quarterly, there's like a much longer meeting. And we're really holding you accountable to, just like a board of directors would, to the strategy that we've laid out and, the KPIs that we've decided on together. And so in short, what we're trying to do is bring this like larger company professional board of directors sort of offering to much smaller companies that really have they never speak with a board of directors. So it's a good value for them.
So that's a fabulous idea. And I wish I'd have had something like that when I was growing my business. I had sort of some opportunities like that, but I didn't really realize the value of it when I was running my startup. I thought, no, I'm smart enough. I can do this myself. I've come from consulting. I can do this. And as the wheels started coming off, I realized, okay, maybe I should have listened to some advice and got involved in more groups like this. So let's talk about marketing for a second. How do you market your offering? Because this is something that's obviously very necessary. And I'm sure you've got to say no to some clients and some customers because of the size or not a great fit. But how do you market Nemean Pride?
Yeah. So if you're talking about the community, we have a different sort of marketing tactic that we use versus our actual business. The community, in which I've, partnered with those 2 other consultants, we have kind of a interesting marketing tactic there. It's all event-based marketing. So, we do outreach. A lot of it is automated outreach via LinkedIn. A lot of it is personal networking outreach. I actually have my own podcast. So as guests come on my podcast, if they seem like they may be a good fit for the community, I'll talk to them about that. So it's basically leading up to an actual event that we host in person. We're trying to invite as many people as we can that we think would be a good fit for the boardroom community. these events that we host, they're basically 1.5-day events. Everybody shows up on a Wednesday, we do dinner together, and then on Thursday, it's like an all-day thing. It's usually in a very interesting, fun location. So like we've done these in Orlando before at like a kayaking venue on this natural spring, and you can hang out on the beach right there at the spring, or you can go kayaking. And so we do some fun event at the beginning. Then we do referral sharing. So amongst the group, we go around the room, everybody talks about what they do, and then we share referrals. So everybody leaves with some prospects, which is great. I think that's a big part of the value. Then what we do is we highlight two different people, two of the different attendees, and the three of us, my three partners, we basically do an ad hoc boardroom, deep dive into their business. And we start asking questions, what are the big challenges they're feeling? And we basically solve their biggest challenge. We create a plan against their biggest challenge right there on the spot. And we do that for two of the guests. Usually we choose the two guests that we think are not going to be the ones who end up joining the boardroom, because we want all of those people to have seen the value, but not have received it themselves, so that they will want to join the boardroom. And so at the end of the day, we pitch, hey guys, if you like what you saw here, we do these events all the time. You join the boardroom, you're going to get this level of expertise and accountability from us. And, once a month, once a quarter, whatever, we get together in a fun place and have a good time.
It's amazing how in consulting, the sales side, that sales cycle is very long and very intensive. And it's probably the most fun part of the work. I mean, I hate doing actual consulting work. It's the sales and the networking that I enjoy. And it sounds like you've got a mini Deloitte or a mini BCC going there in terms of the services that you offer, but in a smarter way, because you don't have any of the overhead of having to pay 1,000 consultants.
That's right. And I mean, look, I started my career out of college. I joined Capgemini, big consulting firm in New York City. So that was the model, I guess, that I was indoctrinated into immediately. I always wanted to, ever since I left the consulting firm, Capgemini, I always knew that someday I would start my own. And here we are. But yeah, you're right. I try to leave out any of the negatives that I don't have to adopt.
Now, let's go back to your personal story. Becoming a digital nomad is quite a big decision. I don't think everyone's got it in them. And there are a couple of things that prevent people from doing what you've done. Number one, stability. Number two, being in front of your customers and being in front of your clients. Talk to me about when you decided to pick up sticks and be a nomad. And how did your family react? I take it you're married.
Yeah. So I think a couple parts to that question. In terms of the, how are your customers going to react if you're never seeing them in person? I just think those days are done. I mean, COVID completely changed that. And that was when we became digital nomads, was post-COVID. Everybody was very used to Zoom at that point. And so it was not an issue at all. And so we immediately decided, hey, let's just set the precedent with every prospect and client we ever talk to that we're a fully remote company. Our consultants are all over the place too. Like we have one in Amsterdam, we have one south of Vegas, we've got one in the mountains of Tennessee. So you can use that as like a cool selling point that you can, mention to your prospects and clients. Like we're global, we're all over, in all these cool places. And so we will never come to your site. And they're actually fine with that because it sounds cool, So that's the first part. The stability, the lack of stability was another thing you said. And, on that one, I don't know that I have advice other than you've got to just get comfortable with a lack of stability. And I think that entrepreneurs have that because that's what it is to run your own business. Any day you're putting out fires and the whole business could crumble if you don't do something right. And those early days of being an entrepreneur, you get used to risk. I became an entrepreneur very early on, and I was very risk-seeking very early on. I've got my private pilot's license. I scuba dive all the time. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs are very adrenaline sort of junkies. My family, that was the third part of the question. My wife was all for it. I mean, we made the decision together, and it was an end of 2020 decision where it was like, we've been in our house. At that time, we had a house in North Carolina. And it was in the same town as the rest of our family, actually, siblings, parents, whatever. And we had just moved back there from New York City, like 6 months before. We were like, all right, we're going to settle here. We're going to have kids, whatever. And then COVID hit. We were working from our house. We spent way too much time with family, if I'm being honest. And that was part of why we said we need to get the hell out of here. And so, yeah, we said, let's go somewhere very different than here. And we decided on Hawaii. We said, if we're going to do this, let's do Hawaii. And then it's like, once you take the first step, once we went to Hawaii, then it was like, okay, we picked everything up and moved. Now we can do it again and again. It's not even hard anymore.
I've got to ask you a housekeeping question. I've lived in a whole bunch of countries as well, and we moved to Malaysia about a year or so before COVID hit, and we were going to travel the whole of Southeast Asia, and then we were stuck in our flat with the police, preventing people from leaving the premises. And then we moved to Norway, and moving house, so we moved actual houses, and we've got 2 boys as well. We got rid of a whole bunch of junk, and it's amazing how much stuff we collect in a very short amount of time. How do you deal? I mean, you've been in Antigua, you said now, for a year. How do you manage the relocation side, the packaging, deciding what to get rid of, what to keep? How does that process work for you?
It's always a challenge, but we are each only allowed, my wife and I, were only allowed 2 check bags and 1 carry-on each. And so all of our possessions have to fit into that. That's it. When we first left North Carolina and went to Hawaii, that was very different. We thought we sold everything, but we also packed a pod and shipped the whole pod to Hawaii with us with a bunch of stuff. And then once we got there, we were like, what do we do with all this stuff? We ended up getting a furnished Airbnb anyway. And so we put everything into storage. So we moved to Hawaii and we have a storage unit here. This is ridiculous. And then every 3 months, we went to the storage unit and we just did an exercise of getting rid of half of our stuff. And by the time we left Hawaii, we had 2 suitcases each plus a carry-on, and we stick to that. But you're right, being here in Antigua now for, I guess it's been a little over 10 months, I'm sure we will not be able to fit everything into those suitcases. And so there's going to have to be a sale and a garbage run and all kinds of stuff we're going to have to do to get rid of whatever we've accumulated.
It's quite a fun process, and we lived in a lot of expat sort of communities. So we're always picking up stuff from folks who are leaving. And then when we leave, we always, we do the same thing and have a sort of a flash sale. So that's quite a fun process. Let's talk about the book that you've got in the works, Nicco, and it's called Why Wait? So the question here is, what inspired you to start writing Why Wait? And who do you have in mind as your ideal reader for this?
Yeah. So, a lot of the clients that we've been working with, remember those businesses in the 2 to 15 million revenue space, as we've been helping them to scale their businesses, run more efficiently, one of the main goals is to pull the owner out of the day-to-day. That's always a problem that CEOs have. And we have noticed that as we've been working with these companies and we're, zooming in from wherever we are in the world, they take a real interest in that. We didn't really see that coming. And they've said, wait, you're traveling where? You're in southern Spain. You're in Croatia right now. That's awesome. I want to do that. And so we just got all this feedback from a lot of entrepreneurs. And, we had already been teaching our CEO clients how to work less in the day-to-day, but we hadn't really been pitching them on what happens when you work less in the day-to-day, all these opportunities that arise, and you can travel and you can do these hobbies and whatever. And as we started to work with them and live our own digital nomad, sort of way, we started to teach them that way more and more. And it just kind of became in high demand, it seemed. And so I wanted to write a book about it. And so, the book is about, it's sort of a combination of what are the things you have to do to change your business such that you can pull out of it and then go travel around. And then, what are some of the cool things that come to you in life once you do start traveling around and living what we're calling the Nemean way. And so that's what the book's about, is basically, hey, here's what I've been doing and here's how you can do it too.
So what timeline have you given yourself to finish this bad boy?
I am going to be done editing by the end of the year, by Christmas. That's my Christmas gift to myself. And then I think it should be out and published probably April 2025.
Do you have a publisher in mind?
Yeah. So we hired a company to facilitate a lot of this stuff for us. And so even a lot of the writing as well. So it's not ghost written. I sort of, they have this really cool like interview process. They interview you, you sort of speak your chapters into existence. They get the rough draft. You edit the rough draft and put it even more in your words. And it kind of goes back and forth. It's kind of a cohesive, collective kind of process, which I like. Because I would not want to write a book from scratch and have to do every single thing myself. That's crazy. But the end product it really is your words. It really is your book. So it's kind of a cool process. And they then get it published and bestseller and all that stuff. Yeah, pretty cool.
Well, there's a reason the good Lord invented editors. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Now, personal branding is something that I like chatting about. And obviously, you are on this podcast as yourself, but representing Nemean Pride and your book and so on. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of personal branding for you and how you go about that. Because a lot of folks aren't very happy putting their face in front of the company because, as you rightly are talking about, you're trying to get the CEO out of the day-to-day running of the business. But now, you're creating a whole boatload of work for yourself in terms of writing a book, going on podcasts, writing social media posts, writing thought leadership articles, and elements like that. Tell me your process of managing your time in terms of personal branding. Is it an hour a day? Is it once a week? Do you set up time once a month? Or do you not have a process for this?
Yeah, well, first I would say that these sorts of activities of getting out there, getting the book written, going on podcasts, going to conferences, sharing the book, speaking at events. Those are the sorts of things that a CEO actually should be doing. It's all the other stuff, my like client-facing billable work that I currently have. That is what is going to disappear over time as I move more consultants in to handle that. That's like our actual operation. And you could say the same thing about any other company, the CEO should not really be doing the sales or the operations. They should really be focused on these things. So I'm fine putting time into these things and hosting events and all that. Do I have a process around it? Yeah, I do have a process around it. So I have, I host a podcast and I go on podcasts. The process is go on one podcast a week, host one podcast a week, and put out one video of educational content per week. And someone on my team drives that process. I don't have to drive it, but I do have to show up and be the talent,
Cool. Well, I mean, that's a big, like, as you say, a big part of being a CEO. So can you tell me a little bit of the inspiration behind your logo and the name Nemean Pride? Because I'm sure I've heard the name somewhere or it rings a bell, but just maybe give our listeners a bit of background into how you came up with the name and the logo.
Yeah, for sure. So my business it's a family run business. My siblings and I actually started it. So, my sister, my brother work for the company. My wife now works for the company. I've got a cousin who works with us. And our last name, Leone, is Italian and Spanish for lion. And so we knew we wanted to go with some sort of lion logo. And in Greek mythology, the fiercest lion of all time is the Nemean lion. Yeah. And that was the lion that Hercules had to defeat as his first labor, his first challenge. And so for us, this was, hey, we're, family company. This is our first challenge. Let's get this business going. Let's knock it out of the park. We got the lion logo. And then, all of our company values are sort of based around this, like, get out there, be fierce, be brutally honest, be precise. It's all these sort of like, you can kind of picture a lion like hunting. And that's the way that we like to work. And I think when we meet with new clients and we tell them that right off the bat, we're like, look, we are the company you hire that is going to tell you the hard truth. You're sometimes not going to want to hear it, but we look at the data, we look at the numbers, we look at the market, and we're going to tell you what we see and decide, we're going to give you our recommendation based on that, whether you like it or not. And that actually ends up being the thing that most of our clients mention when we do like customer testimonials and stuff like that. They usually mention, these guys are the only people that I talk to on a regular basis that will actually tell me the truth and challenge me. And that's what I've been wanting. So it seems to work.
Yeah, well, that's some awesome value. I was going to ask, what's it like working with all of this family? Because I suppose a lot of the companies that are in that $2 to $15 million mark, family-run businesses, and might have similar challenges. So at least you're coming to them with a bit of skill there and expertise. Taking a business from $2 million or $15 million and taking it to the next level, that's quite a big process. And you mentioned you've got HR, finance, legal folks that you engage with. Are there any success stories that you can talk to us about in terms of folks who've worked with you in the past couple of years that have listened to you, number one, and taken their business to not necessarily, well, the next level, but it doesn't have to be hundreds of millions of dollars, but have taken it to the level where they want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a few companies that I can talk about. One is a solar installation company. That was how they started. And, in working with us, what we tried to do was build out a better internal infrastructure that would lend itself to a more sustainable kind of operation and growth going forward. So what do I mean by that? They were selling solar panels, doing the installation, and then never touching that customer again after that. And so putting in place a follow-up process, aftermarket sales, what additional things can we sell them? That kind of started the journey of how we wanted to fix that company. As we started going down that road, we realized that there were some other services that we could sort of fold in to their existing offering. So HVAC, roofing, windows, whole home battery, EV charging station in the garage. There were all these sorts of add-on things that wouldn't really take a whole lot more education for their installation team to learn how to do, but it would completely shift their marketing persona, their identity, from being a solar company to being a whole home energy efficiency company. And that alone, because they had so many of these different touch points, products and services, anytime they closed a new client on one thing, they were able to sell them on many, many more things over time. And they were this like trusted consultant instead of just a one-time construction installer. And they were able to scale a lot just through that. I mean, you can imagine if your average ticket size was 15 grand and then all of a sudden it was 70 grand and you got 3 different products lumped together, that's a 4X of your company, right? So that was a big one. And you have questions about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like one of the values you bring to this type of consulting is changing mindset. So there has to be a mind shift in the organization, because if you're just focused on solar panels, that's all you see. So maybe that's a great example.
Okay.
How difficult was it to get them to make this mind shift, or was it like an aha moment for them where they're like, wait a minute, you're right, we can do this?
Yeah. So the way that we start every one of our engagements is we start with strategy. And, when I try to discuss what we actually do, because it is so sort of wide reaching, it sort of goes across the whole business, really. We've tried to come up with different names for it. It's like organizational development or business building or what. It's hard to put a name to it, but the process is always, we start with strategy. And so we really dig into, over the first 60 to 90 days, what are all their weak points? What are their opportunities for growth? What are opportunities for better marketing messaging or whatever? But also, what do the owners want? What is their end goal? And what are the actual possibilities? Who's the competition? Is it in an industry where there's a lot of, mergers and acquisitions? Are there a lot of private equity companies that might want to be interested? So we put together this 5-year strategy. And there's a 1-year, a 3-year, and a 5-year strategy. And it all starts there. And so throughout that process of digging in, that's when you have a lot of aha moments where it's you thought you were going to be doing, all you knew is you were installing solar panels. But once we really paint this full picture of what you could be doing and these other locations you could be doing it in and all these possibilities, it really allows them to step back from their business for a second. That's what the strategy piece is for. And they get really creative. A lot of times I'm not telling these people what needs to happen in the strategy session. I'm asking questions, and usually the right strategy is already inside of them, and you just got to pull it out. And then what we do once we pull it out is put the project plan in place of like, all right, well, then these are the things that are going to actually have to happen to get there. And at that point, they're already bought in, especially if the strategy was mostly their idea.
Well, I think it's such an exciting process for CEOs or business owners as well to go through this process, because this is sort of the logical next step. And if we go back to sort of historical terms, a chief defeats one area, becomes an earl, a duke, and then, has his kingdom. So I think, any entrepreneur worth their salt is trying to expand and grow. And this is the exciting part of the business. So I know the lead time on this is probably quite long to get these type of customers and to get them in the right mind frame. But I'm sure once they get on the journey, it's a hell of a ride.
Absolutely. No, you're spot on. Yeah, sales cycle is pretty long, but it's also a pretty high ticket. If we're bringing in a whole team of consultants to work with you, it's not going to be cheap necessarily. And yeah, it takes a while, but usually, so after that strategy session, and it's not really a session, it's 60 to 90 days. After that strategy period, we have also uncovered some quick wins. And so, executing on the full strategy is going to take 24 to 36 months or whatever. But getting some of those quick wins, like, oh, this is underpriced. All we have to do is raise the price, right? Or why are we buying from these 6 different vendors when we can consolidate and get a volume discount? It's like simple sort of financial pieces like that, then allow them to start to see the wins and start to see the cash flow improve. And then they're even more bought in for the long-term strategy.
My last question for you. If I had my little genie in a bottle here and I rubbed my little genie, who would be your ideal client? If you could say, who's the next person who should call me and say, I want to work with Nicco, who would that type of company or person be?
Yeah. So it's obviously a CEO, as we've discussed, CEO of a company that is probably around, let's call it 4 to 6 million in revenue. You and maybe a partner or two have really grinded it out to get it to that size. You feel awesome about where you are, but you're extremely exhausted by the day-to-day. You got people issues. You don't totally know your numbers. You're not sure how much longer you can sustain this without banging your head against a wall and dying. And you don't have a CFO yet. I mean, that is the perfect client. Industries that we've worked really well with tend to be some of the more industrial type businesses. So manufacturing, construction, warehousing, logistics, construction trades, any of those sorts of things. And then the business is just adjacent to those. So it could be engineering or architecture firms or those sorts of things. All of those companies we've done really, really good work with.
But Nicco, I'm very sorry I lied. I've got one more question.
Okay.
And it's based on one of your services that I had to look at, which is exit strategy, which, again, you obviously want to try and get CEOs to have more time to pursue other things, but what better way to pursue your time than to sell your business and have lots of money? Talk to me just briefly about that service and, potentially how many exits you've helped arrange since you've started Nemean Pride.
Yeah, well, I can tell you we've had 2 so far this year, and we've done more in past years. But 2 so far this year, those take a long time to come to fruition. One of them was a sale to a private equity firm, and another one was a sale to not a private equity firm, just another buyer who was it was an electrical company that we were working with, electricians, and they sold to a company that was an HVAC company. And so this is a guy owns the HVAC company. They just bought the electrical company. I actually was talking to the new owner, and I was sort of talking to him about my old playbook from that other solar panel company and trying to pitch him on that. So that was one exit. The other one was private equity, much larger. And, what I think I would highlight about the exit strategy thing is it starts with that whole strategy period at the beginning that I already described, figuring out what the owner's goals are. And it's funny, there are certain exits that we could have had with clients that we ended up recommending that they not exit in sort of the traditional, like, sell your business way. And we actually then just went through the process of having them pull out of the day-to-day operation and take on like a board of director role. We had one client that actually ran a marketing and branding agency, She had run it for a long time. She was about 62 years old when she came to us, and she came to us for the exit strategy. She was like, I know I need to sell this. I'm not going to be able to run it forever. We worked with her and basically, sort of mapped out what she does on a weekly, monthly basis, identified which activities did she love, which activities did she not love. She was actually fairly wealthy already, so she didn't need an exit to propel her retirement. And all of that information together, we were able to basically realize that, hey, there's a path for you to pull way back from the company, only work 2 half days a week, and only on the stuff that you really love to do, which is like anytime she got a new client, she loved to do the blueprinting ideation of like the brand strategy for that new client. She really loved that. She hated everything else. And so we documented, delegated, we got everything else off of her plate. And then she just had to work those 2 half days a week, and she could do it remotely also. And so she actually started to live the Nemean way and travel and just zoom in to have those calls. And, she can do this until she's 80. She can do this as long as she wants, and still have partner business. And so exit strategy doesn't always mean like a full exit. It just means like what comes after you stop being so involved in your business.
Those are some super exciting insights. And, we could keep gabbing on, I think. But let's do some closing off of the episode now. Where can I send folks to read or learn a little bit more about yourself and about Nemean Pride?
Yeah, so anybody can come to our website, and anybody can come to my LinkedIn page, message me directly. I have a team of people that when they see messages, they respond to them and set up a call and whatever. I'd love to talk to business owners. But yeah, on our website too, we have, free resources. You can get a certain score of how sellable your business is right now, free valuations. We've got tools that are available to, help you with standard operating procedures. And there's all kinds of things we give away for free, in the hope that you become a client eventually.
Awesome. Well, I'll stick those links in the description so folks can get them directly. But Nicco, what a great chat. Thank you so much. Very inspiring. And I hope some folks do reach out to either grow their business or look at the different options for exiting or staying in their business, but still being able to travel.
Absolutely, man. No, I appreciate the time, and I'll have to come visit you in Norway. I have not hit that yet on my bucket list, so I'll have to come see you up there.
Well, we're going into winter, and honestly, this is such a beautiful time of year. The snow's coming. You can do ice skating. You can see the northern lights. There's a heck of a lot to do here, so we're looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Now, don't forget to go to our YouTube page, and for extra resources, go to kuhne.no. That's KUHNE.no.